Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories. My name is Matt. I know this podcast is quite new, but some of you have been following along for a while now. As you may have noticed, the narrator has changed a couple of times already in just a few months. The truth is, the podcast has been growing extremely slow, and basically nobody has left us any reviews so far. I'm here as the new voice of the podcast and would love to stick around, but I need your support to do so. Please, if you enjoy our content, it would mean so much to us if you could just leave us a review on whichever podcast platform you use. Now, take a deep breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a place where you are invited to set aside all worries and drift into a realm of deep tranquility. Tonight, you will be guided into the gentle arms of slumber by a soft Greek tale called Helen of Troy's Moonlight. Before you begin, find a comfortable position. Allow your eyes to close and notice how easily your breath comes and goes. Feel your body sink deeper into the bed or chair, weightless with relaxation. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest, each breath guiding you toward peace. You are safe here. In just a moment, you will travel to an ancient world bathed in moonlit wonder. Take a long, slow inhale, then exhale. Let any tension slip away, as if carried off by a calming breeze. Breathe in once more, filling your lungs with soothing warmth, and exhale, releasing all lingering worries into the night air. The stars above you shine, waiting to accompany you on this journey. Your heart feels light, and your mind begins to rest. In your imagination, let a soft glow surround you, like a cloak of moonlight enveloping your entire being. No rush, no expectations. Simply allow this glow to transport you to a place where myths and magic blend seamlessly. Breathe in that gentle hush, and breathe out any trace of concern. Soon, you will drift into a story of soft Greek nights and moonlit shores. In this restful space, you find the promise of calmness unfolding. On a balmy evening in ancient Greece, long before the world knew the clang of battle or the cries of heroes, Helen stood upon the gentle rise of a moonlit garden. The hour was very late, and the world around her slept in quiet contentment. Soft, cool breezes roamed about, barely stirring the lush leaves of the aromatic myrtle bushes that dotted the edges of her sanctuary. High above, the moon shone, its silvery glow illuminating her face. Each beam of moonlight seemed to catch in her hair, weaving luminescent threads that shimmered whenever she moved. Helen had come to this tranquil spot, nestled behind the grand palace walls, for its peace. Thick, ancient stones rose around the gardens, creating a protective enclosure, as if the very grounds sought to keep the nighttime hush safe from the bustle of the day. A labyrinth of pathways meandered amid low hedges, fragrant blooms, and small fountains that whispered quietly through trickling water. By daylight, this garden teemed with bright colors and chatter, but now it existed in serene stillness, a silent realm claimed by the moon. Even the sea, visible in the far distance, appeared calm and reflective under the moon's gentle light. White-capped waves rolled ashore, but they seemed to whisper rather than roar. Helen gazed toward that distant shoreline with a thoughtful look. Though her beauty was famed across the land, In this moment, she was as unassuming as a gentle breeze that caresses a sleeping city. She listened to the faint gull calls drifting in from the coast, their cries softened to lullabies by the hush of the late hour. In the center of the garden stood a small marble fountain shaped like a seashell, its basin lined with smooth pebbles. Helen approached it, leaning over to trace a finger through the water's surface. She watched the ripples spread outward, catching and reflecting the moonlight in dancing patterns. Tiny fish, no larger than a fingertip, glided within the fountain, their scales flickering silver in the night's glow. A few curious ones paused near Helen's finger, as though greeting her before they swam gracefully away. Tonight, she wore a simple gown of pale linen, the fabric so light and gentle that it moved with every slight shift in the air. A delicate shawl, woven from threads that captured faint iridescence, hung loosely around her shoulders. Despite her regal bearing, there was no grandeur in her posture, only the poised calm of someone who'd found a moment of solitude. There was a thoughtful quiet in her expression, as if she sought the moon's guidance for a secret wish. Beyond the low stone walls, the city itself dozed in peaceful slumber. The flicker of a lantern here, the glow of a distant brazier there, evidence that a handful of people still moved about in the hush. Most, however, slumbered deeply, lulled by the gentle sea breezes that cooled the air of the warm Greek night. From the palace, the watchful silhouettes of a few night attendants could be glimpsed, but they too stood tranquil, certain that nothing would disturb such an evening. As Helen circled the fountain, an owl perched on a nearby olive branch hooted softly, as if to greet her. She lifted her eyes toward it, smiling in acknowledgement. The bird ruffled its feathers, then settled again, watchful yet calm. The call of the owl was a quiet punctuation in the night, reminding any listener of the forest's hidden life, awake and vital even when humans slept. Helen's steps led her past rows of lavender and rosemary, their scents stirred by the breeze and carried upward toward the star-studded sky. The plants glowed a faint silver under the moon's beams, as if every leaf had been gently dusted with starlight. She breathed in deeply, finding comfort in their familiar aromas. These gardens had long been a refuge for her, a place where she could step away from everything else and let the hush of nature cradle her thoughts. Gradually, she walked down a meandering path of polished stones that gleamed underfoot. The path curved around hedges and led to a small arbor. Vines of climbing jasmine draped the wooden structure, and clusters of delicate white flowers released a perfume that mingled with the soft ocean air. Helen paused there, letting her fingers brush against the blossoms, collecting a faint shimmer of night dew on her skin. The dew felt cool, like the gentle reassurance of the nighttime air. Under this fragrant arch, the moonlight formed a radiant pool at her feet. From a distance, it looked almost as though she were standing in a circle of liquid silver. Helen gazed upward, and for a moment, it seemed the moon itself cast a kind of blessing. If anyone else had been watching, they might have believed that her legendary beauty grew even more luminous under that gentle glow. Yet the night was quiet, and Helen stood alone, thinking of far-off places she had heard whispered in stories. Forests of cypress, islands dotted with marble temples, mountains where gods were said to dwell among the clouds. In this hushed garden, her mind drifted in peaceful reverie. Far from any trouble, Helen felt only the tender presence of the moon and the dreamy hush that wrapped the entire palace in gentle silver. The lull of cicadas, distant in the night, hummed from the hills beyond the city, their soft chorus weaving a lullaby across the garden. Turning from the arbor, Helen followed another small path that twisted toward a modest gate. Beyond it lay a low corridor that opened onto a cobblestone street. The city's architecture, white walls, terracotta roofs, pillars carved with motifs of vines and waves, rested under a blanket of starlight. The street lamps had burned low to conserve oil in the late hour, so that only the faint glow of an occasional torch flickered around corners. Helen stepped through the gate, guided by the gentle wonder that sometimes calls from beyond familiar walls at night. Her sandals made a soft tapping on the stones. Here, in the hush of slumbering Troy, she noticed details easily overlooked by day. The subtle shape of door knockers engraved with sea creatures, the faint sheen of polished thresholds, the tranquil shadows cast by statue and column. A cat slinked out from behind a potted fig tree, pausing to stare at Helen with golden eyes that flashed in the dim. She knelt down, offering a hand in silent greeting. The cat, seeming to sense her calm, stepped forward to rub against her palm. Helen stroked its soft fur, her heart warmed by this gentle companion of the night. After a moment, the cat slipped away into another shadow, continuing its silent prowl. Helen's destination was not far. A curved stone staircase leading up a gentle slope, ultimately opening onto the top of the city's ancient outer wall. She ascended with a relaxed grace, one hand resting lightly on the smooth stone parapet for balance. At the top, she was greeted by a panoramic view of the sea, a vast mirror reflecting the moon's pale disk. The hush was nearly absolute, broken only by the soft hush-hush of the distant surf. Looking beyond the city perimeter, Helen saw the rolling farmland that surrounded Troy, a patchwork of silvery olive groves and shimmering wheat fields. Moonbeams traced each row, turning farmland into a tapestry of gently shifting lights and shadows. She paused, letting her gaze linger on the sea again, drawn by that rhythmic horizon. The waves lapped gently against the shore, each crest glinting with moonlit highlights. Occasionally, a star would catch her eye, a tiny flicker against the immense expanse of the cosmos. A stray breeze teased a lock of Helen's hair. She tucked it behind her ear, smiling at the sensation. She felt neither lonely nor afraid in this silent hour. Instead, she felt woven into the very tapestry of the night, as though the moon and stars recognized her presence and welcomed her with warm acceptance. Further along the wall, a single guard stood watch, leaning lazily against a post. He hadn't noticed Helen's soft approach. Though tradition demanded watchfulness, no threat disturbed the peace of this gentle night. The guard's thoughts must have drifted as well, for when Helen passed near, he gave only a slight nod before returning to his quiet musings. Helen paused at a portion of the wall where a wide crenellation allowed a clear view of the coastline. She leaned forward, resting her forearms on the stone, gazing out to where the sea and sky merged on the horizon. The moon's reflection shimmered upon the water in a silver path, almost like a gentle road across the waves. She imagined what it would be like to walk that road of light, drifting toward the heart of the night sky itself. Such thoughts soothed her like a lullaby for her spirit. Time seemed to stretch and dissolve. Helen let her eyes close for a moment, feeling the soft breeze brush across her cheeks, hearing the distant ocean lull her with its steady pulse. Drifting in and out of a half-waking dream, she imagined a story of a night nymph who carried a lantern of moonlight, guiding travelers along safe, shimmering trails across the seas. The nymph's voice was the hush of waves against the shore, beckoning gently, welcoming all who wandered the starlit paths. Helen felt that voice, deep inside her own thoughts, inviting her to remain in the peaceful cradle of the night. Eventually, she opened her eyes to find the sky had shifted. Some of the stars had wheeled overhead, trailing paths that were invisible but sensed. The moon had climbed higher, bathing the walls in its radiant glow. Helen felt a quiet stirring within, a sense that she should return to the shoreline. With measured steps, she descended from the wall, re-entered the silent streets, and found her way toward the sea. The path leading down to the water was lined with small lantern posts, many of which had gone dark. Only here and there did a soft glow flicker, leftover embers from the evening's earlier illumination. The path was well worn, as countless feet had traced it in the day's bustle. But now it belonged solely to Helen, whose footsteps tapped gently on the cobbles. A nightingale's distant melody drifted from a cluster of cypress trees. She paused to listen, letting its lilting notes soothe her. The nightingale's song rose and fell in a gentle lull, as though greeting the moon and all who wandered in the darkness. When the path curved one last time, it spilled onto the sandy shore. Pale grain stretched out in both directions, kissed by gentle waves. The water's edge shimmered, rolling in slender lines of foam that mirrored the moonlit sky. Helen slipped off her sandals, letting her bare feet sink into the cool sand. It yielded beneath her weight, comforting and solid all at once. Each step drew a soft imprint that the ocean breeze began to erase. She strolled along the water's edge, letting the surf lap at her ankles. The water was a mild temperature, neither cold nor warm, but perfectly balanced to soothe her skin. Where the moonlight touched the rippling surface, tiny silver sparks danced, as if reflecting the heavens themselves. A sense of deep serenity enveloped Helen. She stilled her mind to the hush-hush of the waves, breathing in the fresh air that carried hints of salt and seaweed. Shells and pebbles glinted here and there in the sand, and she bent to pick up one that caught her eye, a smooth, translucent stone that glowed softly in the moonlight. Turning it over in her palm, she felt the gentle edges, worn by countless tides over many years. She wondered what stories the stone could tell, how many dawns and moons it had witnessed. With a calm smile, she tucked it into a small pouch at her waist. The longer she wandered, the more dreamlike the shore became. Gentle clouds drifted across the sky, momentarily veiling the moon, casting the beach in softer shades of darkness. Stars appeared in even greater numbers, twinkling in patterns that resembled scattered pearls across a vast velvet tapestry. Occasionally, the night breeze swirled around Helen, bringing with it the soft rustle of palm fronds from a grove behind the dunes. As she walked, she spotted a faint glow farther down the shore, near a rocky outcrop that gently sloped into the sea. Curious, she made her way toward it. In the moonlight, the rocks glimmered with sea moss and small tide pools that reflected the starlight. Approaching, she noticed a cluster of little mushrooms at the foot of the rocks. Their caps emitted a faint luminescence, as though capturing the essence of the moon's glow. Helen knelt down, marveling at this subtle gift of nature. The mushroom's glow reminded her of stories told in hushed voices, of mystical plants blessed by nocturnal deities, thriving in places where starlight kissed the earth. She reached out a tentative hand to feel the gentle softness of one mushroom's cap. It felt cool and slightly damp, pulsing with a fragile energy that belonged wholly to the night. Helen offered a quiet smile, as though thanking these tiny lights for existing, for sharing their gentle glow. Nearby, A narrow path of smooth stone led around the outcrop to a hidden cove. Helen carefully followed its curve, each step guided by the moon's beams. The cove was a small crescent of sand, guarded by low cliffs. Here, the waves were calmer, rolling in softly, their crests hardly higher than a ripple. In the hush, Helen heard a faint echo, as though the cove itself was quietly humming, a gentle resonance harmonizing with the lull of the sea. At the cove's edge stood an ancient olive tree with a gnarled trunk and leaves that shone softly in the moonlight. Legend said that older trees like this one carried the wisdom of centuries, perhaps even blessings from Athena, the goddess who was thought to protect noble hearts and calm minds. Helen walked up to the tree and rested a hand lightly upon its trunk, feeling the quiet life coursing within. The bark was rough but steady, and for a moment she closed her eyes, letting her breath align with the tree's silence. In that moment, it felt as if her thoughts became entwined with the heartbeat of the earth. She sensed the turning of seasons, the gentle push and pull of tides, the silent glow of countless moons. A soft hush settled in her mind, a deeper calm than she'd known before. Opening her eyes, she saw a single, perfectly formed olive blossom drifting down from a branch above. She caught it in her palm and marveled at its tiny petals. Then she set it gently upon the water, watching as it bobbed on a small wave, drifting away under the moon's silver reflection. Time seemed to stretch again, losing all urgency or measure. Helen found a smooth spot on the sand, close to the cove's gentle tide. She sat and let the rhythmic lullaby of the waves fill her ears. Her gaze traveled across the water, noticing how each movement of the sea caught faint glimmers of starlight and moonlight. She thought of the long tapestry of Greek stories, the birth of gods from the sea's foam, the gentle guidance of lunar deities, and the shimmering presence of hidden wonders that only emerge under a quiet sky. Slowly, her eyes grew heavier, lulled by the hush of the shoreline. Perhaps she drifted into a half-slumber, lulled by the night's gentle symphony. In her drowsy state, she felt as though the moon's rays wove a comforting veil around her shoulders. The distant world of day, its concerns, chores, or responsibilities, vanished beneath the soft hush of waves and the glimmer of moonlight on water. When she finally stirred, the moon had begun its descent toward the horizon. The sky took on a subtle gradient of deeper blues, as if hinting that soon the dawn would arrive. Helen rose, brushing the sand gently from her gown. Looking back along the shore, she saw her footprints forming a half-circle along the beach, telling a story of her nighttime wander. A sense of deep contentment filled her, like a secret that the night had entrusted to her alone. She returned around the rocky outcrop, past the softly glowing mushrooms, and back along the moonlit beach. Once more, she let the waves lap at her ankles, a final caress of the sea's timeless lullaby. The hush of the night was no less powerful, but she knew the hour drifted steadily onward. In time, she'd return to the palace gardens, find her bed, and rest in even deeper slumber. Yet the memory of the moonlit cove, the glowing mushrooms, and the ancient olive tree would linger, a gentle lantern of the soul to guide her dreams. Eventually, Helen reached the foot of the path leading back to the city. The faintest lightening of the eastern sky began to outline the rooftops and columns, but the moon still held her place in the heavens, refusing to yield entirely to dawn. Helen looked up, offering a silent thanks for the peace and clarity found under that silver glow. Her breathing was calm, her heart untroubled. She felt as though every gentle wave had washed away any traces of restlessness from her spirit. Walking through the quiet streets, she passed the gated entrance to the palace garden. The guard at the small post was half dozing, but stirred enough to let her through with a respectful nod. She made her way along the labyrinth of hedges, trailing her fingers over the soft leaves as though greeting old friends. She paused at the fountain, the shimmering fish resting now in darker corners of the water. The trickle of the fountain accompanied the hush of the final hours before dawn. Helen continued along the stone paths until she reached a private courtyard. Vines of wisteria and ivy adorned the walls, and a single lantern burned low near the entrance. She opened a tall wooden door leading to a cozy chamber. Inside, the air was still. A small lamp on a table cast a soft glow across the room, revealing plush cushions and a low couch draped with woven blankets. The walls, decorated with faint murals of soft clouds and flowers, added to the sense of warmth. Helen slipped off her shawl and set it aside, feeling the comforting coolness of the night linger on her arms. With slow, graceful movements, she settled onto the couch, propping a cushion behind her back. Her eyes fluttered, heavy with drowsiness. The hush from the garden beyond still drifted in, as did the subtle fragrance of wisteria. For a moment, she thought of the silver path on the ocean, the quiet cove, the luminescent mushrooms, and the ancient olive tree that seemed a silent keeper of wisdom. She closed her eyes, letting all of these images swirl through her mind like a gentle constellation. Breath by breath, she felt herself surrender to rest. The quiet hush of the night moved within her, inviting every part of her body to soften. She felt her thoughts drifting, no longer tethered to any urgent demand, but floating lightly in that realm between wakefulness and sleep. The faint trickle of a nearby fountain and the whisper of garden breezes played like a lullaby in the darkness. Outside, the moon gradually sank toward the horizon, yet its final beams still touched the palace walls, the fountain waters, and the leaves in the garden. Helen, resting upon the couch, let a final sigh escape her lips, a soft sigh of gratitude, comfort, and surrender to deep rest. All around her, the hush of ancient Troy enveloped her in a warm embrace, and her breathing grew slow, steady, and rhythmic. Soon the first hint of dawn would color the sky in gentle pastels, and the city would stir to life. But Helen drifted into slumber long before that moment, carried into dream by the memory of moonlit shores and softly singing tides. Now, dear traveler, let your eyes grow heavy. Let your breath become slower and calmer. Allow the images of moonlit gardens and soft shores to swirl gently in your mind. You have walked through fragrant paths and felt the hush of a starlit sea. You have touched ancient olive trees and watched glowing mushrooms shimmer in secret coves. Let these gentle memories lull you into a deeper rest. There is no hurry, no need to hold on to any thought or concern. Let the rhythm of your breath be like the soft tide, flowing in and out, washing away all traces of tension. Each exhale releases a bit more care, a bit more weight from your mind and body. Feel your muscles unwind from your forehead and cheeks, down through your shoulders and arms, your chest and back, all the way to your legs and feet. Each part of you becomes light, soft, peaceful. As you sink deeper, imagine moonlight gently covering you like a warm, silken blanket, bringing comfort to every cell. Now is your time to rest fully. Like the gentle waves caressing the shore, your breath sustains you without effort. Your thoughts drift like clouds through a night sky, calm and unhurried. You are safe. You are at peace. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well. May the moon's silver glow guide you into the sweetest dreams, and may you awaken with a heart refreshed by the magic of this tranquil night.